Yeah, welcome to computer security. Why are you here? Anyway, why are you here? Why are you enrolled in this course? Or why are you even sitting here to see if this is worthwhile? Any particular compelling reasons to sit here? Actually, what is security? By itself? Like, what is this all about? Right? Any thoughts? This is supposed to be moving. It's not. Let's try this. Da-da-da. Security. Okay. Glad I have a slide backing up that one word. Right? So I need somebody to break the ice. I'm one of these teachers that just like, oh, I'll sit around and I'll just wait until the awkward silence ensues and somebody actually eventually breaks and actually says something, and then people can start playing. So I'm just going to wait. Anybody, any comments on security?
Security is the maintaining privacy,
Maintaining privacy?
Yeah. Keeping the privacy from being broken.
Okay, so it's confidentiality, right? Making things confidential, yes?
Confidentiality, availability, and, oh my gosh.
Integrity, right?
Integrity,
Yeah, that's so good, look. See, you guys are teaching for me, this is good, okay? And other thoughts, what does this even mean? What does these words mean? Like, what is availability? A little bit, yeah.
It means that someone can access it. It's not like completely locked up.
Yeah, so but what would be the security implications of something not being available? Like, why would something not be available?
It's not cleared for it.
Like, anonymous decides that they don't like this thing and they just take it out of the internet and so it's unavailable. It's an example of availability attack, right? What about integrity? Yeah?
Making sure a program does what it's intended to do.
Yeah, exactly right. That's exactly the definition. Making sure that that what we think comes from somewhere is in fact from that source, right? So somebody tampers with a package, even if they don't look inside of it, we've somehow violated this integrity, right? What about confidentiality? What is confidentiality? It's making sure that bad people, who, however we define that, don't figure something out that we don't want them to know, right? It's keeping secrets secret, right? It's a very broad thing. Actually, we're going to be mostly focusing on this part here. Now, you can also go forward and really just like dump out all these variety of definitions of security. You can add in things like authenticity, making sure that stuff was actually from the person that you thought it was from, right? Even if it's like something was forged by an enemy government or something like that. It's not authentic. Control possession. Even if something is encrypted or something, like suppose you have an encrypted phone or an encrypted hard drive. Well, it may not be under your possession. That's an example of violation of security. The utility of an item could be diminished, right? Because of somebody tampering with it or somehow violating security. A whole bunch of stuff here. And then of course I put some like pictures that I found on Google image search, just to like make this slide look a little bit more authentic. Right? It's what you do when you go presentations, right? And here's another image from Google Images. It shows somebody going through code, finding a bug. We're going to be doing a lot of that in this course. We're going to be finding lots of bugs. We're going to be exploiting lots of bugs. We're going to be writing these kind of hacker tools that have been going around for the past 20 years. This is kind of the thing that CSI doesn't get. We're going to try to get in this course. It's like, how does this all work? How do you actually tinker with something and make it do something unexpected? Right? So let's talk a little bit about confidentiality, because that's going to be the main focus here. Right? In particular, instead of talking about security of everything, we're not going to have time to cover things about like the security of cars, security of this nuclear power plant, and so forth. I'm sure somebody here's going, oh, I just came in here because my power plant is like hacked all the time. So we're going to be like taking particular applications, so like C programs, or like websites and things like that. We're going to be seeing how do these things get hacked? What is the process by which things get hacked and somehow you compromise code that is perfectly legitimate? So let's just take an example. This is a banking application. And I'm bringing up this application because I think it sets an interesting insight into what hackers do and what security spots. Right? Suppose you have the following code here. So some coder who decided that they had a method for transferring money between two accounts, right? So a little code written in effectively C. So you have an account, you have a user, you have an amount that you want to transfer between the users. So you want to transfer money from your account to somebody else, right? Simple as pie. I'm taking this example because it's real, by the way. Okay, and so what do we do? If we're programmers, we have to make sure that we're not sending too much money to someone. So we have to make sure that we have enough money that we can make this transfer. Of course, banks don't do this anymore. They just allow you to transfer however, and then they charge you and take your house or whatever. But usually, banks will check and see that you indeed own the right amount of money. Apparently there was this issue that came up somewhere in Europe where somebody, instead of entering the amount, they entered the account number, which is like in the trillions, and it went through. They had to do some major rollbacks or so on. But that's an example of where you don't have the right checks. Now this is the check that we have in this code here. Do we have enough money on this account? If so, we're going to proceed and we're going to take that money from your account and we're going to put it into the recipient's account and we're going to declare success. Otherwise we'll say, you don't have enough money. Is there anything wrong with this? Okay. Hold that thought. Any other people see what's wrong here? Yes. I see smiles and a few faces here. Great. It's a familiar face. I think you've taken this all before. Oh, it was a totally different name course. So what's the bug here? Yeah, go ahead.
There's no check for negatives?
Yes. If this is C code, then the implied type of all the different variables here is that they're signed, meaning that they can take negative values. Still check that the amount is negative. What happens when it's negative? You gobble up money from the other person, right? No check for that. But this illustrates what was missing in the process by which this was coded, right? So the coder did all these checks and probably thought this was fine, right? But somehow this idea of there being negative numbers just didn't enter the person's mind, right? This lack of check has been pervasive for 3 decades now. And now we have billions of lines of source code written by people who know some stuff about security, sometimes. And they code all this stuff, and we're all dependent on it. And now people are going through and finding these massive troves of flaws. And this is an example of a flaw, right? Now, I'll make an argument that this is actually a type of a problem that's not going to go away anytime soon. But we can also have some discussion about how would you make programming languages better so that it would be harder for you to make these types of mistakes. Right? C, in this particular case here, is an example of language that's kind of like holding a grenade. You're like, oh, it's going to go off soon. It's really like it allows you to do whatever you want, but it's extremely dangerous. Here's another interesting thing just to kind of tickle your brain a little bit about security. It's the notion that you always have to trust something, whether you like it or not. Suppose you were to try to invent the perfect computer, the perfect program. You're going to be like, yeah, screw all this security research. It's like, I am going to make the next Tor, and it's going to be perfect. It will be nirvana, right? You code it up, and then you start to realize a few things, including the following. And this is an actual example that was from a Turing Award lecture back in like 1980-something. What I'm showing you here is a snapshot of object M. This is a part of a compiler. It's actually part of the C compiler. And there was this guy, Ken Thompson, who not only talked about doing the following, but actually did the following. He put in special code in the compiler that did the following. If I'm compiling the program login, which is the program that people used to use to just log on to multi-user computers, then I'm going to add a backdoor. Right? But you don't leave it at that, because then if somebody looks at your code for your compiler, well, they can see that there's a backdoor and there will be things in the media, right? So that it also has another check that says, like, if you are compiling the compiler, you add this other check, or these two checks actually, so that that compiler in turn has binary code for adding a backdoor to login as well as propagating itself, right? So this is Ken Thompson here. We talked about that, that this is something that actually did. Now what's interesting about this thing here is that nobody will actually see this bug if they only look at source code. Nobody can see this backdoor if they look at source code. Because your compiler source code looks pristine. But you have to compile it with something. And that's already a binary. It's the compiler itself. And that one has the backdoor. So it is going to propagate the backdoor. Right? And now every login purpose now is backdoor. Isn't that pretty fascinating? Now the point that he wanted to raise, because he did this as a purpose, it wasn't just malicious. It's probably the first example of a hacker we have. But what he wanted to illustrate is that you're always trusting something. And in this case here, the root of your trust is at the binary compiler that you were given to turn C code into binary. Somebody wrote that compiler. What's in it? And it's also to illustrate the point that even just looking at the source code may not be enough. Let me take another example here. Now, this is one that was encountered at Microsoft. So Microsoft has had a very sad history with security. I'm sure you guys are aware of this, right? And they know that they've had a very sad history of security. So they've actually spent a lot of effort trying to ramp up their security policies. So here's a part of a code, and this is just kind of like a illustrating code here. That's trying to help you log on. So just when you're logging on to Windows, you start typing up your password, right? Now, it's important that we're not just storing your password in just plain text somewhere, right? Why would this be important? Yeah, if somebody gets access to your computer, they know your password, right? So what should we rather do than having passwords in plain text? Encrypt it, but how, if we encrypt it, how do we make sure that somebody entered the right password?
You encrypt with the header and see if they match.
Yeah, somehow you want to just take, like effectively what you want to say, you want to take like the actual password that you had, this is my actual password, and it's like a string or something, and I want to take it through some sort of device here that it creates like a, I don't know, I was going to turn it to spaghetti, but I won't be able to do it with chalk. I'm going to create something which is kind of like a hashed version of the password, right? And now if somebody tries to log on and they enter like 1, 2, 3, password, please tell me that nobody in here has this password. It's always one. It's the person who looks away. Okay, and you take it through the same device, and you end up with a different hash here, right? Hashed 2. If these things are equal, then you know that these things must have been equal, right? And the whole notion here is that this box here, this hashing function that we have, it's really, really hard for it to go back. It's called the cryptographic hash, right? So it's kind of like encrypting it, right? So there's not really a decrypt. You can just like smash it down and create this thing on the other end and go back. So that's what we try to do in computers, is that when you get somebody's password, we hash it right away and then we compare hashes. Now that actually is usually not enough, and we'll learn a few tactics about why that's not enough. But in this particular case, that's what they did. They would take in a password from a person just entering their password on the Windows login screen. And they would call this kind of, let's just say that we're doing a string compare here of the real password, but just to make it simple. But it could be a string comparison of the hashed password. What's important about this code is that somewhere you had to read in the real password. And what Microsoft really wanted to make sure here was that it wasn't visible in plain text in memory at some point. So there's a buffer here where you read in your password. And so what they did was that they validated this stuff, and then at the end of this, they overwrote that password with all zeros using memset. Makes perfect sense, right? So that after you've done executing this method over here, the plain text password is nowhere to be seen. Make sense, right? There was a bug report reported over this code later. And guess what it said? Oh, when I look through the memory of the computer, I can see the plain text password, even though I'm not logging on, right? Can you imagine like the meeting that they had, the engineers, like how defeated would you be if you're working at Microsoft and you spent the effort of creating this code here and you get a bug report that exactly validates all of your effort. But what went wrong? What's wrong with this?
Isn't that real password is stored?
So the real password is stored in memory here in this PWD buffer, but then there's like this memset that like overwrites the whole thing with zeros. You may have already seen the answer, haven't you, Aaron? Yes. We shall give others a chance.
Yeah.
Yes. What could have possibly gone wrong here? You're not in the exact same steps as the people who wrote the code initially. They're like, what is going on? Usually using more expletives than that.
Does the string compare function somehow save it elsewhere?
It's a good candidate. Maybe there's an internal buffer in string compare that it, but it turns out that it's not. It's just a little loop and checks character by character, yeah?
Aren't you passing a real password as a string?
You're passing a, yeah, so it's stylized a little bit. Imagine there's no hashing going on or something like that. But yeah, you're right. There's something.
No, sorry, I meant for the validate password function.
The validate password. Yeah, so
Or is that?
I should have waited with the whole spiel about hashing, because right now this one here is just comparing
Oh,
the
that's
hashes
right.
before.
Oh, okay.
But like imagine you're comparing the hash passwords, but at some point you needed to read in the actual password, right?
Okay.
And that's in this buffer, and then you memset and so forth. Now this is going, that actually has a really unsatisfying answer to this question, which is that when you, why is the light in? No? Yeah? Hmm? So, when the compiler looks at this code, what is a compiler trying to do? Compiler is taking your code and be like, yeah. Okay, we're gonna make it really efficient. Like, we're just gonna take all this stuff and it's gonna order it, rearrange it, move stuff out, cut out a bunch of stuff that you don't need, remove all your comments, remove stuff that you never call again. Take your loop that only is called like 4 times and just call it individually 4 times. It's doing all this optimization, right? So as a part of what it's doing, before this completely fades away, is that it looks at it and be like, hey, you're never using password after this memset. Why would you need this memset? So it just removed it. The compiler, for efficiency reasons, removed the security thing, right? How unsatisfying is that? And there are these flame wars online where there are programmers that are like, your compiler is stupid, it's broken, why is it doing what it's doing? The compiler is like, why are you using it wrong, right? Give it hints about what it needs, blah, 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 follow this standard, blah, blah, blah. We'll hear a whole lecture about those types of arguments. But the thing is that, just by looking at the code, you would not have been able to find this particular vulnerability. Now, we're going to be looking at a lot of code, but I'm just telling you, sometimes you have to look at more than just the code, which is why we're going to cover a lot of assembly in this lecture. Now, let's take a little step back here. So these are 2 examples of things, actually 3 examples of things that we're going to be kind of talking about a little. Now, security is a big field, though. And if we take some of the subdivisions of security, we can think about them as being things that deal with your operating systems, things that deal with network, like if you're sniffing up traffic or you're hijacking that wireless network in the house that no one talks about. Cryptography, if you're working at the NSA, Department of Defense, and like you can't talk about your work. Software, vulnerabilities and so forth, right? What are we going to be actually covering in this course? Because obviously we can't cover all of them. So let me show you this new kind of graph. We're going to cover roughly this. A lot of software stuff, teensy bit of cryptography, maybe 1 or 2 lectures. This is some part of operating system security, and a bit of network stuff, right? That's how far we can get here. Now, could you come to me and be like, more crypto, Right? Yeah, sure. There's a lot more crypto to be taught, and it's like it's like several courses worth of stuff, and we're unfortunately not going to be able to cover some of them, but this is kind of where we're headed here. Just so kind of like a word of warning. Make sense? I argue that this is a very interesting part of security, obviously because I picked it and all that stuff. But this covers a variety of problems that are prevalent today. So crypto is kind of its own sub-community, very mathematical and so forth. And it really requires like a full course to be able to be useful in it. The rest of it, well, we can kind of blow it balance a little bit. If you have questions about particular things, like more about sandbox in the OS or networks and like that, that's something that we can cover. And you also get a chance in this course to have your own lecture. Like you're going to be preparing a video lecture at some point, which is going to be uploaded online with material that you'll read up. So if there's some particular thing that you're particularly interested in, well, by all means, dive into it, delve into the subject, and work on it. And it should be really interesting for us as we go. So, a little bit about the course. So from 10,000 feet, really, just to kind of like drill it home, we're going to be looking at the detection, exploitation, and prevention of software vulnerabilities. And we'll do a particular deep dive into binary exploitation, which I think arguably is one of the hardest things you can do in security. Yeah, crypto can be hard if you're doing really advanced cryptography, but if you come out of this course having done all the lectures and all the labs and so forth, you'll actually come out with a lot of confidence in the field of security. You can go to one of these hacker conferences, you can talk about stuff, you know, people are going to be like, whoa. It'll be really cool. So if you want to invest, and I will tell you that this is a useful skill set. There's going to be, in the next 3 years, about 6 million jobs worldwide in computer security, recent estimates. There's currently about 1 million unfilled positions in computer security. It takes 20 to 30% longer for headhunters to fill roles in computer security than any other tech role, which is already hard to fill. There's a huge shortage of people who know this stuff. What I'm teaching you here is a little bit about how things break, because I think that if you know how things break, you're a lot more adaptive to understanding how to fix it. So that's the kind of, oh, it's also a welcome spot, right? So this is hopefully going to be awesome. At least that's the intent of the course. It may be a bit of work, fun work, yes. I'm sure all professors promise this, right? It's going to be so much fun this work. It should actually be fun. At least my biased sample of people taking this course tell me it's fun, even though it's sometimes a daunting 101. But it's lab-driven. You'll get hands-on experience with a lot of things, and those experiences will actually be good for you in a variety of different subjects. So like you'll learn to use Linux intimately. You'll know everything about C and assembly and how they interact. You'll know a lot of stuff by it. This is me. This used to be a slide filled with other potential instructors or TAs and so forth. I currently don't have a TA for the course, but well, let's see how many people persist here, and maybe we can add more people who can help out with the course. We'll see. But if you have any questions about who the hell I am, go ahead and ask. And then there's this boilerplate thing I need to include here. And you know exactly what I'm going to say, because you've heard it so many times before.
I see a blank slide.
See a blank slide. Well, it has a title already, and the title should be indicative of what's coming up, right? So I'm going to need to ask you guys to be ethical in this course, right? Because I'm teaching you a bunch of stuff that you can actually abuse. I'm actually teaching you a bunch of stuff that's current and that could be used to mount an attack against whatever target. You'll be amazed actually how potent some of the stuff that you'll learn here actually is. But I think that the reason it actually is outweighed by the rationale that if you want to understand how to defend any organization, you need to understand how the adversary works. And you need to do that by effectively becoming your own adversary. You need to have that thinking. The key to good offense, key to good defense is good offense, right? Understanding that. Now that also means that because of the stuff you learn here, you are agreeing implicitly here that you will not use these things for anything unethical, right? You're going to be getting permission, authorization from the people that whose computers you're going to be targeting. So if you want to hack somebody's website, they should know about it and have consented to it. Otherwise, you and probably me are going to be in big trouble. Okay? And it's also illegal and all sorts of stuff. This is going to be like Yeah, it could end very badly if you don't follow these instructions, right? So you will not mount illegal malicious attacks, you will not compromise the system without permission. You also understand that I am bound to have to report stuff that I see that's not ethical. All this. My hands are a little bit tied, right? And the reason why I have to put it in here is because of bad experience with just this in the past. I've had to deal with students that were doing stuff they should not have been doing. Yeah, we'll not talk much more about that. Anyway, so thank you for agreeing to this. Yes, everybody, yes. We're going to be very ethical in this course. Don't look away. I see you. Okay. Yeah, that's good. You're also expected to adhere to the following policy. You should solve the assignments yourself. I know it's a hacking course. That doesn't mean you should hack the assignments, right? Yeah, within the realm of reasonable, you can hack assignments, but like the idea is that you're doing the work. You're not supposed to like just offload it to a sweatshop somewhere that you have, just happen to have online, right? Reddit is not supposed to do your assignments, right? They can do their own. You can ask reasonable questions, but don't expect me to sit down and write a lot of code for you. But like, feel free to ask questions. In fact, feel free to ask questions at high-level things to your fellow people in the class, because everybody's kind of struggling with the same thing. Some of the things are going to be harder than others, and you will learn a lot from that level of interaction. Every time I've taught this course, there's been a lot of discussion between people about like, oh, what's the high-level idea here? I tried this and I tried that, and so forth. But that doesn't mean just like, can I have your code? Thanks. Right? Doesn't work. Okay? And also take reasonable precautions to protect the confidentiality of your own work, right? Oh, my computer's open and I'm leaving the classroom and it has the solutions. They come back. That's not cool. You know what I mean, right? Yeah. So I have to report lasers into Emory Ethics Council. Unfortunately, I had to do that a number of times before. Please don't be one of those people. So, just to summarize this thing, in case you zoned out, don't cheat. Have permission. Agreed? Oh, cool? Yeah. One person agreed. This is good. Nice. It's more than normal. So some of the logistics about what we're doing. So obviously, we'll be meeting at least on Wednesdays at 11:30. But that's also on Monday, so I'll see you next Monday. Lectures are from 11:30 to 12:45. And I'm going to give you a count on a machine called Triton at Triton.cs. It will be a Linux machine, and you'll have your own account. I'll send you your password by email. And before I make a decision, do you want your homework assignments to be due at 6 p.m., 9 p.m., or midnight? 6 p.m., raise your hand. 9 p.m., raise your hand. Midnight, raise your hand. Oh, look. Oh, wow. It's like I guessed the outcome. But remember, class, you chose this. Yes. Okay, good. And I put in a late hand in of 30%. Trying to think about what would be a good kind of late-handed policy. And here are the two things that I'm juggling, right? I understand stuff happens, right? Stuff will happen like, oh, my hamster died last year, and I'm really sad. And like, sure, okay, that's fine. And like, you really need to mourn your hamster. And you can have some late penalty because something happens, right? But it's actually really, it's not very constructive for you to be like late and then perpetually late with everything in the course, because if you start eating into the next assignment's time, well, you're going to have this cascade of what will ultimately be a failure, right? So I'm trying to kind of discourage you from being too late on an assignment, and I'm wondering what is the best mechanism by which to achieve this. Do you guys want to have like a one-off, like if you're late with an assignment, it's like 30%, and then you can be like maybe a few days late, and then it goes away. If you want it to be incremental 10% per day, which I find that people are just like, I'm just pass-fail. It doesn't quite work for me, right? Or do you want it to be some different mechanism? I'm open for ideas. Actually, how many pass-fail people in here? You can speak, it's okay. I won't hold it against you. I'm assuming I'll have to ask later in the semester. Or just look it up in Opus. Okay. All right. Yeah, so I'm actually soliciting feedback. What do you guys think? One off 30%? and then like you get a few days of leave, and after that you're gonna have to give a doctor's note that your hamster's dead or something. Or do you want it to be progressive, or how did you want?
I like
Progressive. Progressive, okay. Okay. I'll figure out a way to make the grading easy for that. Okay? So let's make it progressive, but how about something like 20% per day, and then you have 5 days, and that means you can be 5 days late effectively for the next assignment? Is that true?
15?
What?
10? 15%?
How many people? 15%. Is that better? 17.5%. So 20% or 15%? Okay, I'm fine with 15%. It's just the, don't start the assignment on the day it's due then. Just promise this, okay? And then I may then revise this. Okay, so 15% per day, and then let's make it a few days that, like, I don't want to have to grade everything a week after the fact because some people are late. So I'll just give you a few days of late penalties. Okay? Does that make sense? It's all done for you guys. Yes, yes, yes. Yes. Okay. Most of these things are individual assignments, so a little bit on your own, but that also means that you will pick up all the skills that we teach in this course. So a little bit more work, you will learn it all. Okay? And I'm going to record the presentations, or I'm trying to record the presentations, mostly so that in this age you know what I'm doing and make sure that I'm not saying anything bad. But it also means that you can come back to listen to some of the stuff. This does not mean that you should be showing up for class. The whole purpose of coming to class is because you get a little interaction, you could ask questions, you could enjoy a cup of coffee from one of the weird coffee shops around. It's nice things being in class, right? It's also that, like, it's a lot less engaging to be on a treadmill and trying to listen to the sound of somebody's working back and forth on the laptop at like 1.5 speed. Come to class, please. So I recorded a presentation for a long time. I had a class of, I think it was like 350 at one point. It was a bigger class at that time. At one point, I was by myself in that auditorium, this giant auditorium. It felt like I was in some sort of weird, like, nightmarish dream where I'm just there and everybody like, start recording. Hello, everyone. Like, how do you do it, right? Do you just pretend that people ask you questions? You like hear voices that ask you questions? Like, great question, Sal. Right? So it's nicer also for me, in order to be engaging, that there are people here who respond to what I'm saying. You can also be here if you're on your computer. You might as well not be here, by the way. I've also had that where I'm just like, but yeah, anyway. So I'll record the presentations, and that's kind of done for your own benefit. And I actually have recordings from earlier years that I can give you access to. So if you guys go away for a while, or if you miss something, you can catch up, and that's really no problem. But this is something that I think might be useful. Oh yes, hacking. Should we talk about hacking? By the way, any questions so far? We've talked a lot about logistics and purpose and so forth now. I will wait for questions, as I will always. Yes?
Are the exam dates set yet?
Not quite, but there's like a draft schedule that will come up at the end of the course. And that's kind of just verbatim copy of the dates from last semester. I'm very open to suggestions about good exam dates.
Is it one midterm, one final?
One midterm, one final is the plan anyway. But it is a labs-driven course. So it's the weight on these is not that high. I think the final is like 25%. Okay, great. More questions about logistics? Yeah.
Are assignments generally weekly or bi-weekly?
Both. So some assignments, if they're short, you'll have a week, and then there's 2-week assignments that are slightly more involved, but they usually include like sub-parts. All right. Cool. Okay. Hacking. It's the craft of making things do something they were not intended to do. What have you guys hacked in your life? Is there any experiences that you guys want to share? It's off the record.
Yeah, does this fall under the purview of what you're required to report?
Yeah, or you could say, a friend of mine has reported. Any experiences? Some people have really fun stories from things that they've hacked. And it can be not just like breaking into something, ha 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 ha, but like changing something to do something that's not meant to do. Like if you're stuck in traffic when there's this helpful sign saying delays ahead. If you change it to zombies ahead, that's really funny. I find it funny, even though you're not supposed to do it. But that's an example of kind of a hack. No people like raise their hands. This is good. Okay.
So I sort of did a half-assed attempt at trying to hack into the MLS system, the real estate sort of database where they have like all the.
I'm gonna pause this.
This wasn't even that long ago, so I'm not like this was my first attempt ever.
Eagle is in the basket.
This is my first attempt ever to do anything like questionably hacking. So I tried to brute force a password. I do like a dictionary tag on the MLS website. Yeah.
And you had permission, I take it?
No.
Yes. So let it be known that there was this guy, what's his name, Weeb, has a longer name, that's his nickname, who was actually, I think, embedded, and I think he even got jail time or something like that, for going on, was it the AT&T website or something? And so like there's this account name or like account number, and he changed one digit in that and got somebody else's account. That was it. Then of course he took that information and he calculated and all that stuff. This probably wasn't a good idea. But that was the level of sophistication that he put into that level of attack.
I gave up pretty quick.
This is good.
Yeah.
That's why you're here.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh no.
We're doing lockpicking this?
We may. I need to ask Melanie if she wants to come and give a lecture.
Yeah, I gotta use it.
Oh, that's right, yeah. So last year, and hopefully we can repeat it, Melanie, one of the professors in the department, they come and tell you about lockpicking. Which is really fun. So maybe we'll take some of your wedding rings and like lock them up and just try to recover them. Doesn't come very great distance for your future. Or something like that. So that could be really fun. Does that sound interesting to learn how to pick locks?
Like how does it hack?
It's kind of a hack, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a physical hack. Anyway, so that's an example of a hack. Did you do something with that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
There was an abandoned building. Called Botnets.
But no one owns it.
Is that because of you? Okay. Anyway, I don't think I want to hear more. This is a bad question. Allegedly. Yeah. Anyway, so hacking is this craft of making things do what they're not intended. And I'll gradually reveal some of the stuff that I was involved in earlier that hopefully is no longer counts towards anything. Let me tell you a little bit about the history of hacking so we get a little bit of perspective here. So back in like 2000-ish or so, like what does it mean to be a hacker? It means that you are a teenager with few friends. There's no Pokemon Go. There's nothing like you to uplift your spirits and gain some sort of moral meaning for yourself. You go online and meet other people who are also cyber criminals, or cyber criminals. The intent though of going online to start to hack things is mostly driven by curiosity, right? You're just trying to figure out, like, hey, I can tinker with this program, so I do something unintended. I can maybe take over an IRC channel. Anybody know what IRC is? Internet Relay Chat? Please, somebody. Oh, thank you for nodding your heads, because it feels so old. It's like 5 generations since Snapchat or something, right? But you could take over channels there, and that would make you the most powerful teenager on the planet, right? It's having operator status and so forth. So you did it for like the fun, and you did it for the fame. And there's really no malice in it, right? What has changed since then is that instead of it just being like a few hobbyist hackers that are kind of just tinkering with stuff, there's actually quite a few hobbyist hackers, and they're driven a little bit differently. They've been tempted by fate, maybe, but by people who realize that these skills can actually get used for a variety of different purposes. In fact, if you could make an investment, suppose you're you could invest in one particular field or something on the planet, you should invest in cyber criminals. It's like the fastest growing thing you could find. It's billions of dollars the market, and it's just like starting to explode. It's like 75 billion.
Are they on an exchange somewhere?
Yeah, I don't know. You tell me. There may be eventually. I'm sure they have some funny name there.
On the Tor network, maybe.
Yeah, like 1337 dot something. And what has happened as a result of that is that the hackers now have this prospect of like teaming up with this really menacing looking 3D rendered gangs. And they're driven a little bit more by power and by money, right? There's some sort of equality between them. Now, this is maybe not so, this feels like a very kind of shallow slide, and that's because it kind of is. But there's actually a kernel of truth here, which is that if you were growing up in some place like Romania, or some parts of Taiwan, or you're in some parts of the Russian, kind of like outer parts of Russia, something like that, going into hacking may be the most lucrative option for you ever. It pays you 20 to 30 times what you could earn in any legitimate sport. And if you think about the offer of like, yeah, so you could join this international group, you could meet smart people, you don't really need too many skills, you can just like write emails and do so forth like that. You're getting upwards of $100,000 a month compensation compared to your like $5,000 a month salary that you could be possibly getting as an executive in the country, or $1,000 as a student. You're practically zero risk. Nobody's going to get caught like that. Even if you get caught, you just bribe the police and you're fine. This happens regularly in Russia. And yeah, all you have to do is that you just have to hack some targets that like this really shady looking guys and like, why do they even wear the kind of stripy stuff? That they pass to you like, oh, I'll give you a good price, yes. And then if you hack this site, isn't that? So, and then you get your payment, you're just oblivious to that. Like this is actually a really lucrative career option for a lot of people, and it will be growing quite a lot because, yeah, it comes with power and comes with money, right? And then what we've also had is that the legitimate players in these equations, the big governments around the world, are really, really curious about how they can effectively arm the internet, right? How they can further their interests or simply spy on each other by using technology. And they've traditionally lacked the technical resources to do so. So what they do is that they're like, yeah, come work for us. Yeah. No. Or maybe even they bust people that have been caught for hacking and they just hire them into these groups or units of hacking. This happens in Israel, for instance, where they're like, yeah, we will lock you up for many years, or you can join our unit here. And you're like, yeah, I'll join our unit. Yeah, sounds good, thank you. Like, and so you actually have these elite armies that have been working on it for a long time in places like Thailand and Taiwan. There's massive ones around Russia. There's actually several segments in Russia. China has like entire buildings of dedicated hackers that they recruit in various different ways. There's now, I think, 30 to 40,000 hackers that are needed to just fill up the available roles of NSA, CIA, and so forth. They're really growing their cyber command right there. They even now go to these hacker conferences in their full regalia and be like, yeah, it doesn't matter if you smoke marijuana. Take that away. It's okay. Just come hack for us. They'll forgive anything that you've done in the past, just if you come and hack for them, right? So there's massive recruiting that's happening in this area as well, right? So that's all the things that changed a little bit. So back when I was growing up, which is more close to here, of course, I'm certified to past a little bit, but what was going on is that there was no money in the equation. You were doing it because you were curious and it was fun, and you met a lot of smart people doing hacking, right? And now, like, you go online and it's just the starkness. You might think that the amount of money here is something that might be confined to the underground. It's actually not. If you think about the value of a single bug, let's take Chrome, for instance. Most people here probably use Chrome or some variant of Chrome, unless you're unlucky enough to be a Mac user. Then suppose you find a bug against Chrome. How much do you think you would legitimately be able to get for it in terms of just absolute money?
I guess it depends on if you try to exploit it or if you try to...
What I mean is like a fully working exploit that works remotely against stock Chrome.
Oh.
Turnkey exploit is what it's called.
Like a big file cache.
What is a big...
Bigger.
Stop me.
Bigger. Maybe right there.
How wide is... What's the volume? Like, what's the denomination? Is it euros or dollars? Because they have 500 euros.
3 cubic meters.
Okay, yeah. So, but like, give me a figure. Unit dimensional scale. 500,000. 500,000?
And
5
5 million.
million.
5 million?
A billion or in
A
a job.
billion. Billion and a job offer. Like, I'll take the job offer, you can keep the billion. Right? A billion would be a lot of money for a work like that. Right? The thing is that with those bugs is that once you use them, people will start picking up on it and then will get patched relatively soon, unless you're using it very sparingly against particular targets, usually in the Middle East, that don't have a lot of protection. So it actually has a, the way it's usually paid out is that you get some amount of money and then like you get installments. But I'm actually talking about legitimate things here. So Google will pay you 60 to 100,000, actually 100,000 now is the current value here. $100,000, Google will pay you if you tell them that there's a bug. That's over the counter. Now, if you're actually talking about the underground, which I think where you guys are going, like you want a remote bug against iOS, yeah, you're looking at about $500,000 to $1 million. I'm sure you're going to be impoverished. Like you're going to need a lot of these to fill up your casserole. Yeah. I still think that's a lot of money. Now, granted, there's actually a huge amount of work behind this. It's usually months of work behind this. So it's a really high risk, high reward type of career. Like you work for 3 months, you may find a bug and you can finally, then you have to win a competition to get this money, or you just have to like talk to this extremely weird broker who lives in Thailand called the Grok, who takes 20% of the transaction fee, and you sell your exploit. You have no idea what's buying it. It's either the Russian mob or CIA or NSA, which is the usual backdraft behind you, or somebody else you have no idea whom, and they don't know who you are, hopefully. And then you get installments as long as the book keeps working. It's like the shadiest dealing you could possibly do. This guy on Twitter, you can find him right now. I've even told you his handle, so you can go ahead and sell whatever you find so far. Yeah, so now this kind of value, which in my opinion is sort of high, may be indicative that perhaps it's because there are not too many bugs, right? Right? That would be a logical conclusion, right? They would be hard to find, and therefore there's a lot of value. Now, just looking not so long ago at just the list of bugs from Microsoft that are critical, meaning they can just remotely take over your computer, what really caught my eye is this. 46 pages. It's like, I look at this and I'm just bleeding. Like, it's like, how could you have so many bugs that are serious? This is not even counting all the like little things that just like annoy us. Right? This is stuff that takes over your computer. And that's every day there's something new here. Like, Internet Explorer is just like you might as well just have like an open house. Like, live in an open house, like the people on Arrested Development. You know? So, tons of bugs, huh? So if there's no shortage of bugs, what are we actually looking at in terms of the progress in this year? Does this mean that like there's just a whole bunch of bugs, but we're finding them all now, right? Is that what's happening? We're finding them now, and like eventually we'll just like run out of bugs.
I don't know if I'm thinking about this to be clear, but I don't think you'll ever really run out of bugs, because as like time moves on and like technology changes, so will the architecture, and there will always be a bug.
Yeah, even if you get better programming and so forth, there's going to be massive emphasis on features. Like, oh, it's Pokemon and it moves and it's like, nobody security checked that application, right? They didn't expect it to be that big, right? Right? Yeah. And there's just like, oh, my PDF reader, it makes coffee. Why does it make coffee? Right? Seriously, right? Like, they invested no time in security because it doesn't sell. I'm like, look, here's a PDF reader that can make coffee, and here's another PDF reader that can't make coffee, but it's like it's more secure. You'll think about it and be like, I really should pick that one. And then you take the coffee one, right? Every day, this is how you vote, right? Now, you might think that there might be a dearth of vulnerabilities. Like, clearly I'm wrong. Not everybody thinks that. But just look at the progression of reported vulnerabilities. You'll see an alarming trend line here. Now, it's kind of like a little S-curve. But the reason why it's flattening out, I think, is there's several things that are work there. One of them is that, like, we don't have enough people to find all these different bugs. The other thing is that there's a lot of things that are no longer reported because there's a lot of money on the line. Instead of reporting them, you go and you be like, hey, the Grok, I know this is shady, but I really want a new stereo, or whatever is the latest thing. My iPad is broken. Okay?
You just pay off, you know, like if you get there's a ransomware attack against your network or something, you just pay the ransom rather than, you know.
Everybody pays the ransom and nobody admits it. It's like, it's amazing how companies are kind of wimpy like that. They're just like, nobody can know, but please don't tell anyone. Like, we don't want to taint our brand because somebody hacked us. Right? So yeah, ransomware is one of the fastest growing things on the internet, actually. You guys all know what ransomware is. Like when it takes this malware that takes your computer and starts encrypting your hard drive slowly, and then eventually it'll be like, ha ha ha, I took all your children's photos and I encrypt. Now you pay 300 Bitcoin and you see things back. Otherwise, all gone. And there's a countdown timer just for like effect. Yeah. Scoundrels, right? So actually, there was a really cool thing in April where somebody reverse engineered one of these crypto locker variants, like one of these ransomwares, and found that they had incorrectly implemented one of the encryption functions and created like a constant solver. If anybody's into math here, they found a constant solver that could just find the decryption key. Beautiful. So we're running a competition right now. It's like a 2-week competition where we have like 3,000 people competing for like a capture the flag stuff in hacking. One of the problems there is actually to use a similar constant solver to reverse engineer a program. We can talk more about that in just a little bit. But yeah, ransomware. Anyway, so where do these bugs come from, right? Why do we have so many bugs, right? Well, like I just said, there's a heavy emphasis on features, right? All the stuff that you've been programming in all your classes, it's all about making new flashy things. Like, look, it jumps, right? It's more important that something jumps and like glows and has more features, or makes coffee, than it is that it's like, oh look, I really structured this code well, and it is safe, and I've written a programming language that takes a long time to write, but it's really types it. Yeah, that's not really going to fly, is it? No. It should. Companies should be valuing that, but they don't. They really just care about having like, oh, it integrates into Flurkadurk. Oh, that's so cool. Right? That's really the emphasis today. And I don't see that changing, right? And it's also the key thing that the programmers are often just unaware of security issues. They think like, oh yeah, security, that's like making sure of this thing over there. And then they're like, make all these other errors. Like, oh, you can inject cheat commands into my website. I didn't realize that. Right? So you often catch people very blindsided in just a number of different security things that exist. So I have a company on the side called Syndis, where we have like 7 people that just hack random companies. They talk to us like, oh, we're this big company over here, can you hack us? And we like hack them and give them a report how we did it. And the purpose of that is to tell them some of the stuff that they're blindsided by. Like, oh, you totally didn't think about the fact that you have giving open VPN, or that everybody's running Acrobat Reader in your organization. Maybe that's not such a good idea, right? Or that we destroyed SQL injection against your front door, or your Wi-Fi is open. Like, it could be like stupid things like that that they just didn't think about. Right? Some of the recent things that we're doing is that all these companies, they're contributing back to GitHub. And when you add something on GitHub, if you accidentally add your credentials to GitHub and then you delete them, well, the whole log thing is still on GitHub. So you can look through the logs of all these organizations to see what they removed. And then you'll be like, oh, look, an SSH key. Or look, application deployment key. And you have access to their kingdoms. Right? That's just the latest thing that they look at. So those types of things that people completely just like didn't think about, but is an example of the way hackers look. That's the thing that you need to be constantly on the guard for. There's another thing, which is that this code complexity today has completely exploded. Like the number of lines that are running in your phone is absolutely insane. And it's growing at an exponential rate, right? Your Android phone, like there's so many layers in that operating system, right? There's an entire thing called the baseband, which is just responsible for making the phone calls. It's not even accessible to the Android programmers. And if you change anything that's going into that baseband, the whole thing crashes, which usually indicates that there's lots of vulnerabilities down there. The Android base is like a Linux, which has had a lot of recent bugs. On top of that, you have like a whole Java library base, and people finding bugs in those that have been there for like 15, 20 years. And then you have like all these extra libraries, and now you have like Unity and whatnot. You just like, if you look at how much is just running on your Debian version here, like the number of lines of code that you're looking at is just astronomical. You can't really have an overview of what's going on in your computer. When I was back in the hacker circles, I knew everything that was happening on my computer. I had read all the kernel stuff, I changed the stuff I didn't want, I read the libraries, I had full visibility of what my computer was doing. I had zero idea what my computer does today. I am absolutely oblivious now, because things have changed so fast, and there's so many layers of crap that are just funneled in there somehow. This is something that's not changing anytime soon. Another thing is that code reuse has become extremely common, right? So you have, somebody writes a piece of code for image compression or image decompression, like JPEG. It's an extremely boring thing to write, right? You have to open up the JPEG specification. Okay, it's this file over here. You have to interlace these. Oh, you just shoot yourself, right? And it's terrible, right? So what you do is that if you're Microsoft or something, you just steal somebody's JPEG library, right? That was written eons ago, right? That's kind of what happens. So for instance, back in 2001, Netscape had a really interesting vulnerability in their JPEG library, which was that you could have an image on your website, and if somebody looked at it in a Netscape browser, you would own their computer. It's kind of a bad thing, right? So it was patched. Then 2 years later, Internet Explorer had the exact same bug, because at the time they were like, oh, we need another JPEG run. Oh, let's just take this old library over here that still had that bug and use it. So somebody just found a bug in like gzip, which is used for everybody to do any type of compression. And lo and behold, now somebody can actually hack Pathfinder on Mars, right? Because it's running gzip. Are they going to update it? Probably not, right? Just hope that people have the dignity not to touch the Mars rover. So this is extremely common. Code reuse is all over the place. So if you found a bug in one of them, you'll find a bug in so many devices. And I don't see that these things are changing, unfortunately. Now, let's talk a little bit about, so we talked about these vulnerabilities. Let's talk a little bit about how they're used. Any questions so far, by the way? I'm seeing yawns. This is an alarming proposition. I know the volume of oxygen has decreased a little bit. It's now after 12 o'clock, which is like, oh, it's really not, right? But even so, there's 15 more minutes of goodies. Right? So we're going to talk about how we use vulnerabilities. So how do we use vulnerabilities? Suppose you're now like not bound by the ethical laws of this course. What would you do if you could hack stuff? Are you hacking stuff? Okay, you promise, right? You're still bound by the ethics. I was just making hypothetical statements. How would you use these, right? So what do people actually use them for? Well, there are these things called botnets. Ha ha ha, this is where your mother's computer gets to be used, yeah? You unknowingly join all these computers, all these poor old grandmothers that have their machine on, and my machine keeps going, yeah, I'm going to turn it off, Grandma. And there's like this little kid, 16-year-old somewhere in some godforsaken country that's like effectively herding all these, like painstakingly herding all these computers, like getting more malware onto new computers, making sure that it goes off of the computers that die. Like somebody who's like shepherding this botnet, right? And of course there's this guy who was telling this guy like, hey, my name is Ymir again. I'm sorry I come from a country that's stereotypical. But can you take this computer and attack this server? Because I send them a note and I say, hey, my name is Ymir. You pay $50,000 so we take your website out. Yes? And they didn't pay, right? So take all your computers and send stuff. It's called distributed denial of service attack. And of course, what tends to happen is that the company ponies up and just sends the money over, right? Pretty lucrative. Now DDoS is just sending garbage things. Could be like, open the website. You can think about it as being the physical analog of somebody going on the radio like, hey, everybody come to Kroger. Yes. We go to this particular Kroger, right? And then all these cars fill up the parking lot of Kroger, and all these people are like mindlessly walking through the store. Nobody buys anything, but it's totally full of people. And legitimate customers are like, babe, like stuck somewhere in traffic, right? That's what a DDoS is about. And when this like radio broadcast ends, then things go back to normal and nothing is destroyed. It's just availability kind of attack, right? So that's what a DDoS is about. Now you could also do something a little bit more nefarious. You could first, you could, for instance, send spam, right? It's our friend, right? You could send things like, welcome to Emory. Or what are some other spam messages? Yes, your uncle just died. Even though we not speak same language or not same country, your uncle died and he left lots of money. Yes, only for you, my friend. Where are you from? So the intent here is that you send enough spam messages to these people that eventually you'll find somebody who just happens to be in a mind state where they're susceptible to whatever the attack is. And there have been people who have penetrated these spam networks and try to figure out who are the people who respond to these. And it just happens to be that there are people who just are maybe expecting something like that, or people who just happen to not have the mental faculties that are required to really filter out these types of messages for old people. They're like a variety of people. And there's enough people in there that respond to spam messages that you can gain about $10,000 to $50,000 a day from spending oceans of spam, right? Really annoying, but that's what some of these botnets are doing. This, for instance, was the Mariposa botnet before it was taken down by Microsoft. It involved some 12 million computers. This is several years ago. I'm sure the botnets today are way bigger. Now that their toaster's online. Why is your toaster online? Right? Why does it need to be part of a botnet? Okay? So like, this is very dense, guys. Is that your families? Yes? Okay. So this is something that I took together. These are some of the biggest botnets that have been actually infiltrated by researchers to try to estimate their sizes. And this is from 2010, I think. So there's a lot of stuff that has happened since then in terms of the size of these nets. Now, another thing you can do is to have click bots. You know how you can have a really boring page on the internet. It's like, look, it's my dog, right? It's a picture of your dog. Nobody cares, right? But you can also put it in Google Ads on that, and then somebody goes into your page and not only likes your dog, and you're like, oh, cool. There's like new gambling things they're trying, or like there's a local business in my area that I can click. If somebody clicks your ads, or somebody like clicks ads on your site, you get a little bit of commission. Right? So what do hackers or criminals do? Yes, that's right. You take all your computers and make them click that ad so that you get a little bit of money. Now, if you're Google and you notice this ad, a really minuscule ad, on a site that nobody likes, nobody goes to, because it's just one dog. It's like, no one cares. And all of a sudden, like the volume of traffic of clicks goes from like 1 to a gazillion, and it stays a gazillion, and it goes back down. You would probably be like, huh, he got really popular. Must have been a radio celebrity, instant overnight success, right? Or possibly something was going on, right? So they've actually been really good at thwarting these types of attacks. But Google and all these players still lose a lot of money to click bots, right? It's one of the things that nobody really wants to talk about in tech, because you don't want to, I mean, the whole, if you think about it, the smartest people on the planet are all making advertising stuff so that people click more links, right? You have all these computer scientists that are effectively just trying to create a glorified advertiser, and therefore, if the whole advertising thing is really just like grandmother computers who are accidentally clicking links, then the whole system kind of fumbles down with a house of cards. So it's like one of these dirty secrets, and this is actually a big problem. Now, yeah, you can play up here. And then there's just outright theft, like the CryptoLocker stuff we talked about before, which just encrypts all your stuff and then asks you for money, and you'll be glad to pay it instead of losing all your precious pictures. This actually happened to somebody in my family who was running a business, and fortunately he had backups, but the backups were network-attached storage. So the virus went in, not only encrypted all of the stuff in the computers, but all of the backups as well, because they were all live. So yeah, they ponied up the bitcoins that were requested over there to get the data back. And some Russian was, he's now driving a really fancy car. Now you can also have more elaborate attacks, like for instance, anybody know who this is? Yes.
Is that Stuxnet?
Yeah, this is from Stuxnet, right? This is Ahmadinejad, right? How do I pronounce it? Ahmadinejad. So, according to at least official reports, the Stuxnet virus that seems to have been a joint collaboration between Israel and the US, we know this because somebody asked, like, did you make this virus? No. Did you guys make this virus? No. Israel, did you guys make this virus? No. What they did was a very elaborate thing where they took together like 4 zero-day exploits against Windows, each of which you could have sold for $100,000. So 4 exploits against Windows that would work against any such computer that were specifically just used for this attack, so that you could get access to computers around the planet. It checked whether or not it was in Iran or anywhere close to Iran, and if not, it would just like sacrifice itself. And then once it was there, it would start infecting USB drives, so like flash drives, and like move them between. Of course, nobody practices kind of like safe sex with the USB sticks. You just like move them across and spread whatever you need. And so this started to infect computers that were air-gapped, meaning that they were not connected to the internet. And it checked like, oh, am I a part of the computers that are in like the Iranian power plant? I'm like, oh, that sounds very interesting. I'm going to spread here, right? And then it even like had a driver inside of itself that they stole certificates from like 2, I think, Chinese companies to sign drivers, so that they like. It looked like it was a Microsoft-approved driver for SCADA controllers, which are these industrial controllers. But what it would do was that it would follow and like learn how this centrifuge was being used, it was connected to, just learn the daily schedule and so forth and record it. Then eventually it would exploit a flaw in the SCADA controller and start spinning the centrifuge really fast and then really slow, and really fast and really slow. And just to kind of add a hint of irony to it, it would display like everything was going normal based on what it had learned about the regular behavior. So you have all these scientists looking at their centrifuges going absolutely bananas, and all of the meters seem to indicate that everything is normal. Now this attack was particularly done because it's hard to procure centrifuges, so the centrifuges that are being used in Iran came from Libya, from Gaddafi's stash, and so they're hard to get back. But this apparently, or reputedly, took out some, at least 20% of the nuclear centrifuges, which was intended to slow down the progress of enrichment of uranium, and yada yada. But it's an extremely elaborate attack. Why do we know about it? We know about it because somebody messed up when they were making it. Instead of just targeting a few places, they accidentally put in something so they like attack the whole internet. And then people would be like, there's like this intern who's just starting, like one of you guys like starting like at a company, and it's like, yeah, just take some binary from the stasher and just try to like decompile and see what's going on. And they're like, I have no idea what's going on. No, just keep at it. Go. This is like tens of megabytes. Like it has its own update service. Like this virus updates itself. It's like, please wait while Stuxnet updates itself, right? And so like eventually they start to say like, oh my lord, there's like layers and layers and layers and layers in here. This is one of the most elaborate contraptions that have been created in this online war that is being waged right now. This, RSA got hacked at some point. There's been very little press about this. So that all the securities, all the keys that people have been using in 2012, somebody just got to know the seeds to all of them. And moreover, they offered, some like random party offered one of the secretaries who's working there a job if she could procure a list of clients, which she did. And so they also had the matched list of who the clients are for each of the individual RSA entities. And what happened was that all these companies eventually started to be like, yeah, we should just come out of the closet, right? Google admitted that they had suffered some very intense hacks, many of which that they traced back to China. Yahoo has been hacked so many times that it's almost laughable. Juniper, one of the makers of, like Juniper and Cisco make some of the biggest routers in the world. Symantec owns VeriSign, which is a big deal. So they get like forward signatures, but they also make the antivirus. And yeah, so when we like attack a company, we're like, oh, great, they have antivirus. So we just attack the antivirus server because antivirus is really crappily written. And the antivirus has access to all the other computers. We're like, no, game over, done. It's like the worst security thing that exists in the planet. Anyway, given this information, so what happened was that all these companies are hacked and they started saying like, we need to be a little bit more open about the fact that everybody's getting it. Which brings me to the question of, if I would just lock the door right now, just this one like that, and I asked you, how would you hack? How would you answer that question? If you were at some imaginary gunpoint, you're like, yeah, you have to hack into the Pentagon or something like that. What would you do, right?
Stack Overflow.
Please help me, I'm at a gunpoint. Yeah. You could Stack Overflow. You could have an actual Stack Overflow, we can talk about that later. So let me just show you, this is one of my favorite slides because obviously I spent a lot of time making it. It is in fact how people hack today. Well, this is kind of what security is like today, which is that people reinforce their front door ad nauseum. You're like, I have a really good front door, right? And you're like, yeah, I see that. Anyway, so, okay, I'm not quite there at the slide. There's one more slide I want to do. One of the things that people do is called phishing. So what do you do as phishing? You open up your Twitter account and you start to like enter your password, and then you enter your credentials, and all of a sudden you realize, oh no, it's Twitter. Oh gosh. And like you realize that your passwords are leaked, and you use the same password everywhere. And so like your one and only password has now left the internet, right? And you're getting login attempts on all your devices. Great. You're like, oh no. And then you also realize that like, oh, maybe I should have clicked the email from Citibank, even though there was really pressing me to click it. Be like, you have to do it right now, and like it's going to be deleted. Or you're not going to get that parcel unless you open the attachment. There's an attachment, and your UPS stuff is going to go away. You might be losing something. You said, oh no, I made a huge mistake, right? So these things are examples of phishing attacks, and you might think that they're all kind of silly because you look at them and you're like, I see through that, right? And then you start to look at some of these statistics. So if you look at statistics from Canada, you'll realize that like, well, actually, every day they receive about 156 emails that have phishing attacks in them. And of these, about 10%, or 16 million, actually get through the filters, right? And so through these filters, half of them get opened. Half of them, you open the email, and be like, oh, that's very interesting. Oh, I didn't know I had a parcel. Oh, it's going to go away soon, right? And like, even so, you'll start to maybe suspect that something is not that good. But yet again, 10% of those 8 million still opened in Canada. 800,000 links every day are clicked, right? And if you click those links, you open up a website, it looks very legitimate, and 10% of those, still 80,000 fall for a scam every day with information that has quite a lot of value on the internet, including your personal details, possibly account information, so forth. This is a really wide net. And if you're not going to do a wide net phishing attack, if you really know who your target is, you can do something called spear phishing, meaning you just want that one person. And this is something that's extremely potent. It always works. Right? So let me show you a slide here. This is the slide I was talking about, and then I can let you go. So suppose there's this information you want to procure. There's a source code to something, or there's like the back details, something like that. Or it's the unreleased footage from that latest Star Wars movie. Or something that you just desperately want here, right? Or you want something you want to modify. You want to add your name to some list or something. Now, how would you attack the specific target? Well, normally, if it's something that's extremely important, it's living behind some sort of firewall, right? And usually, not just a firewall, like everything is trying to protect this thing from being penetrated, right? You have this whole network, and nobody can get inside. And like, if you think about you being a hacker and you want to try to just get straight in, well, it's not really going to be feasible. A lot of people still think that this is the way hackers work because it used to be true, but 15 years ago, it is no longer true. What you do today is that instead you realize that most of this information is living with some organization, and any big organization has its own flaws, including the fact that they have employees, right? And the employees have to be able to do their job, and the job usually involves something like, say, responding to email, right? So there's this external email server, or some way in which email can arrive at the site. And so what you do is that you just send an email that has a very fine attachment that's specifically designed to be a part of, and you can tag along an email over here. Just like make sure that it goes to that person that like just started the company, and the email says that like, hey, like I'm this guy at the company, and I need you to like check out these accounts or something like that. And invariably, somebody will click it. And now, if somebody clicks it, and you know what kind of machines they have, Well, you can infect their machines, you can walk around the company, you're all just like going through a tunnel that's looking like it came from inside the company. You eventually make your way to the system administrator's computer through lateral movement, and then you have access to everything, you go and you pick up your stuff, you just funnel it back through your tunnel and nobody will be the wiser. This happens all the time. Most of the things we never hear about because we just don't, right? We only ever think, what?
I said the company's too embarrassed.
The companies, but no, most companies don't never find out, right? You only hear about the tip of the iceberg, the people get caught. And those are usually not the best people, right? This happens all the time, right? Anyway, so I will show you next time some actual attacks and some like actual lecture notes. So stay tuned with emails for more additional information about logistics and reporting. I have office hours at 1 if anybody's interested. Thank you.